Hi, my beautiful family. Welcome back to Mr. Peter Stories. You are a walking miracle. This world needs your light. That mirror, it shows a legend in the making. Yesterday, deleted. Today, your masterpiece. You're not just worthy, you're essential. Smile wide. You are wildly loved. Choose greatness. Live fearlessly. Your existence is a gift. You're not just family. You're my heart beating outside my body. Quick prayer for my family. Father, shower blessings on these precious souls. Fill them with unstoppable joy. Amen. Drop your location. USA, UK, Caribbean. Wherever you shine from. Last stories. Hit different, right? Tell me why. Type present. Your mood right now. You don't just make this community, you are this community. Endless love, Mr. Peter. Comments below, let's make this section explode. Hiabel Romari Jasiri stifled a yawn as she hurried through the private terminal at JFK, her uniform perfectly pressed despite the last-minute call that had dragged her from bed at 4 a.m. She needed this assignment desperately. Her mother's medical bills weren't going to pay themselves, and the premium rate for private charter flights would cover at least half of this month's expenses. "You're cutting it close," the ground coordinator said, barely looking up from his tablet. The client requested departure in 30 minutes. "Traffic," Hiabel lied, tucking a stray curl back into her immaculate bun. "Who's the client?" "Anonymous booking through Rio Enterprises. All I know is it's a direct flight to Paris." He handed her the manifest. "Your solo cabin crew today. Original team called in sick." Hiabel raised an eyebrow. Solo service on a transatlantic private flight was unusual, but the additional hazard pay made it worth it. She quickly checked the galley stock list. Dom Perignon, beluga caviar, Wagyu steaks, definitely a high roller client. The Gulfstream G650 gleamed under the hangar lights, its sleek silhouette promising luxury beyond imagination. Hiabel performed her pre-flight checks with practiced efficiency, her mind calculating the tips she might receive if service went well. Every dollar mattered now. She was arranging fresh orchids in the main cabin when she felt it. That distinct shift in air pressure that came when the cabin door opened. Hiabel straightened, professional smile already in place as she turned. The smile froze on her face. The man who ducked into the cabin was not what she expected. Private jet owners were typically older, with the soft paunches and receding hairlines that came with decades of excess. This man was different. Tall and athletic with broad shoulders stretching the limits of his custom suit, he moved with the contained power of a predator. His sharp jawline was covered in precisely maintained stubble, and his rich brown hair had just enough length to suggest he couldn't be bothered with frequent cuts despite its obvious quality. But it was his eyes that stole Hiabel's breath, piercing hazel that shifted between green and gold, depending on how the light hit them. Those eyes assessed her now with unsettling intensity. "Good morning, sir," she managed, her voice steadier than she felt. "Welcome aboard." He didn't respond immediately, setting down his leather briefcase and removing his suit jacket with fluid grace. His silence stretched a beat too long. "Mr. Rio will be fine," he finally said, his voice a deep rumble that seemed to vibrate through her chest. Hiabel faltered. "You're Chandler Rio?" The billionaire tech mogul was notoriously private. The few photos in circulation showed him from a distance or partially obscured. A shadow of annoyance crossed his face. "Is that a problem?" "Not at all, Mr. Rio. May I take your jacket?" He handed it over, their fingers brushing momentarily. The simple contact shouldn't have sent electricity up her arm, but Hiabel found herself pulling away too quickly, as if burned. "Pre-departure champagne," she offered, desperate to regain her professional footing. "Coffee. Black." He settled into one of the plush leather seats, opening his laptop with clear dismissal. Hiabel retreated to the galley, grateful for the moment to compose herself. "Get it together," she scolded internally. So what if he was unfairly gorgeous? He was just another rich client who wouldn't remember her name 5 minutes after landing. By the time they were airborne, Hannibal had recovered her professional poise. She served Chandler his coffee with practiced grace, along with a selection of breakfast pastries he ignored. He worked in unbroken concentration, barely acknowledging her presence except to accept or decline service with minimal words. 3 hours into the flight, the first hint of turbulence rattled the cabin. Hannibal secured the galley and made her way to the passenger area. "Mr. Rio, we're expecting some turbulence. Please fasten your seatbelt." He looked up from his work, irritation flickering across his features. "I'm fine." The plane lurched suddenly, hard enough that Hannibal had to grab the nearest seat to steady herself. "Sir, I really must insist." The next drop was violent. The aircraft seemed to fall from beneath her feet, and Hannibal lost her balance completely. She tumbled forward, directly into Chandler Rio's lap. His reflexes were surprisingly quick. Strong hands gripped her waist, steadying her against him as the plane continued to bounce through rough air. For one suspended moment, Hannibal found herself pressed against his chest, her face inches from his. This close, she could see flecks of amber in his eyes, smell the expensive cologne that clung to his skin, feel the solid warmth of his body beneath her. I'm so sorry," she stammered, mortified and yet unable to move away while the plane continued to buck and sway. Chandler didn't immediately release her. Instead, his grip tightened fractionally, his eyes darkening as they dropped to her lips for the briefest second. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice lower than before. The plane stabilized enough for Hannibal to regain her footing, and she pulled away, straightening her uniform with trembling hands. "Yes, fine. Thank you for catching me." His expression was unreadable, but something had shifted in the air between them, a current of awareness that hadn't been there before. "Perhaps I should fasten my seatbelt after all," he said, the corner of his mouth lifting in what might have been the ghost of a smile. Hannibal nodded, unable to trust her voice, and retreated to the jump seat in the galley, her heart hammered against her ribs. What was wrong with her? She'd handled handsome, powerful men before without losing her composure. But something about Chandler Rio bypassed all her professional detachment, speaking directly to a primal part of herself she generally kept locked away. Once the turbulence subsided, Hannibal busied herself preparing lunch, grateful for the familiar routine. As she arranged the seared scallops on Chandler's plate with artistic precision, she resolved to maintain absolute professionalism for the remainder of the flight. That resolution lasted until she served his meal. "Will there be anything else with your lunch, Mr. Rio?" she asked, setting down the plate. He closed his laptop, giving her his full attention for the first time since boarding. Under that focused gaze, Hannibal felt exposed, as if he could see through her uniform to the woman beneath. "Join me," he said, surprising her. "I beg your pardon. I dislike eating alone, and you must need a break." He gestured to the seat across from him. "Unless company during meals isn't permitted by your employer." "It's unusual," Hannibal admitted, hesitating. There was no specific rule against it, but in her 5 years of flying private charters, no one had ever made such a request. "I'm paying for the entire aircraft," he pointed out. "I believe that allows me some latitude with the usual protocols." Put that way, she could hardly refuse. Hannibal prepared a small plate for herself and sat across from him, hyper-aware of every movement. "What's your name?" he asked, taking a sip of the mineral water she'd served with lunch. "Hannibal Jassiri." "Unusual name." "My father was Ethiopian. My mother is Kenyan-American," she explained, unsure why she was volunteering personal information. "Hannibal means gift in Amharic." Something flickered in his eyes. Appropriate. The simple word, delivered in that deep voice, sent an unwelcome flutter through her stomach. Hayabel busied herself with her food, searching for a safe topic. "What brings you to Paris, Mr. Rio?" "Business." He offered no elaboration. Instead, he asked, "How long have you been a flight attendant?" 5 years, 3 with private charters. "And is this your career of choice, or a means to an end?" The question was borderline insulting, implying her job was merely a stepping stone. Hayabel felt a flare of defensiveness. "I have a degree in international business," she said coolly. "This job allows me to see the world while supporting my family." Interest sharpened his gaze. "Supporting your family?" Hayabel hesitated, then decided there was no harm in basic facts. "My mother needs specialized medical care. The benefits are good, but the costs still add up." Something in his expression softened fractionally. "That's admirable." Before she could respond, the plane jolted again, sending a splash of water across the table and onto Chandler's pristine white shirt. "I'm so sorry." Hayabel jumped up, grabbing a napkin and instinctively reaching to blot the stain. Her hand pressed against his chest before she realized the impropriety. Beneath the damp fabric, she felt solid muscle and radiating heat. Chandler went perfectly still under her touch, but didn't pull away. Hayabel froze, suddenly aware of how close they were, her hand still resting against him. She looked up to find his eyes had darkened to a smoky green, his pupils dilated. The air between them seemed to crackle with electricity. "I should get you a fresh shirt," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engines. "Yes," he agreed, though neither of them moved. After what seemed like an eternity, Hayabel managed to step back, breaking the spell. She retreated to the closet where emergency amenities were stored, including basic clothing items. Her hands shook as she selected a replacement shirt. When she returned, Chandler had removed the wet shirt entirely. Hayabel nearly dropped the replacement at the sight of his bare chest, sculpted muscle under golden skin, with a dusting of dark hair narrowing down his abdomen and disappearing beneath his waistband. A faint scar curved along his right side, somehow making him more real, more human. He looked up, catching her staring. Heat rose in her cheeks as she handed him the shirt. "Thank you," he said, the words holding a weight beyond simple gratitude. Their fingers brushed during the exchange, the brief contact sending a shock through her system. Chandler's eyes held hers as he slowly pulled on the shirt, leaving several buttons undone at the top. "How much longer until we land?" he asked, his voice rougher than before. Hayabel checked her watch, struggling to focus. "About 3 hours, sir." "Chandler," he corrected, surprising her again. "When we're alone, at least." The implication that they were indeed alone, thousands of feet above the ocean in this pressurized cabin, sent a thrill of danger through her. This was venturing into territory well beyond professional boundaries. "I should check the weather report," she said, needing distance from the magnetic pull of his presence. In the safety of the galley, Hayabel pressed her hands to her heated cheeks. What was happening to her? She'd built her career on maintaining perfect composure, on being invisible when needed, and efficient always. Now she was behaving like a flustered schoolgirl. She busied herself with unnecessary tasks, postponing her return to the cabin until absolutely necessary. When she finally emerged, Chandler had returned to his work. The moment, whatever it had been, apparently passed. The remainder of the flight proceeded without incident, Chandler absorbed in his laptop while Hayabel prepared the cabin for landing. If she occasionally felt his eyes on her when her back was turned, she pretended not to notice. As they began their descent into Paris, Hayabel secured the cabin and took her jump seat. Through the window, the city of light sparkled in the early evening, romantic and full of promise. "First time in Paris?" Chandler asked, surprising her with the conversational opening. "No, I've been several times for work," she replied. "Never long enough to truly explore it, though." He studied her thoughtfully. "That's a shame. Paris should be experienced, not merely visited." Something in his tone made her pulse quicken. Perhaps someday. The plane touched down smoothly at Le Bourget Airport. As Hayabel prepared to open the door, Chandler gathered his belongings. "Thank you for the excellent service, Hayabel," he said, the sound of her name on his lips sending an unexpected shiver down her spine. "It was my pleasure, Mr. Rio." He paused, then reached into his jacket and extracted a business card. "I'll be in Paris for 3 days. If you're interested in experiencing the city properly, call this number." Hayabel stared at the card. Simple white stock with only a phone number embossed in silver. No name, no company, anonymous yet unmistakably exclusive. "I couldn't possibly—" "It's not a professional request," he clarified, his voice dropping to a timbre that seemed to resonate through her body, "and entirely up to you." With that, he stepped past her and descended the airstairs to where a sleek black car waited on the tarmac. Hayabel watched him go, the business card burning between her fingers like a dangerous promise. Common sense told her to discard it immediately. Nothing good could come from blurring the lines with a client, especially one as powerful and enigmatic as Chandler Rio. Yet as she slipped the card into her pocket, Hayabel knew with absolute certainty that before the night was over, she would call that number. Some attractions were simply too powerful to deny, no matter how forbidden they might be. Chapter 2. Parisian Surrender. Hayabel's finger hovered over the call button, her practical mind waging war with the heat still lingering on her skin from Chandler's touch. Her hotel room felt suddenly too small, too ordinary, compared to the possibility waiting in that silver-embossed number. "This is insane," she whispered, pressing call before courage deserted her. His deep voice answered on the second ring. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't call." No greeting, no introduction needed, as if he'd been waiting, knowing exactly who would be on the other end. 20 minutes later, a sleek black car delivered her to a discreet restaurant with no name on the door, just a brass plaque with an engraved R. Inside, the intimate space held only a handful of tables spaced for privacy. Chandler stood as she approached, his eyes taking her in with such raw appreciation that her skin flushed beneath her simple cream blouse and best jeans. "You look beautiful," he said simply, the sincerity in his tone more powerful than elaborate compliments. In the muted light, away from the formality of the jet, Chandler seemed both more approachable and more dangerous, his bespoke suit replaced by dark jeans and a charcoal sweater that emphasized his broad shoulders. Wine appeared without being ordered, followed by exquisite dishes that weren't on any menu she could see. Each flavor was a revelation, each shared glance across the table building tension that hummed between them like live current. "You own this place," she realized eventually. "A small investment," he confirmed with casual understatement. The chef deserved a platform for his talent. Their conversation flowed with surprising ease. Chandler asked about her Ethiopian heritage, seeming genuinely fascinated by her mixed cultural background. Hayabel found herself sharing stories of childhood summers in Nairobi, the loss of her father to heart disease, her mother's similar genetic condition. "Hence the private charter work," he concluded, understanding lighting his eyes. "Better pay for medical bills." The simple observation, connecting dots others missed, touched her unexpectedly. "What about your family?" she asked. Shadow crossed his face. "None to speak of. Orphaned young, raised in the system." The revelation surprised her. Nothing in public records suggested such humble beginnings for the tech titan. As the evening progressed, Hayabel discovered Chandler possessed unexpected depths. A dry wit that caught her off guard, a surprising knowledge of Ethiopian literature, flashes of vulnerability quickly masked behind those mesmerizing eyes. After dinner, he suggested a walk along the Seine. When cool night air raised goosebumps on her arms, he silently draped his jacket over her shoulders. The weight of it, carrying his warmth and sandalwood scent, felt unbearably intimate. They paused to watch a tourist boat glide by, its lights dancing on the dark water. Why me? Hayabel asked suddenly. You must meet beautiful women constantly. Chandler turned, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. I meet many people. Few make an impression. His hand rose to her face, fingers tracing her cheekbone with unexpected gentleness. From the moment you turned around on that plane. The simple honesty in his voice undid her final hesitation. When he leaned down, she met him halfway, their lips connecting in a kiss that began as gentle exploration but quickly blazed into consuming fire. Pressed against the stone wall overlooking the river, Hayabel felt his body become a solid wall of heat against hers. His kisses traveled down her neck, drawing forth gasps she couldn't suppress. We shouldn't do this here, she whispered, even as her body arched instinctively against his. My place is close, he murmured against her skin, the question implicit in his tone. At this crossroads, the sensible choice was clear. Thank him for dinner and return alone to her modest hotel. Instead, Hayabel twined her fingers with his. Lead the way. His place was a private penthouse atop one of Paris's most exclusive addresses, the elevator opening directly into a foyer of marble and tasteful art. But Hayabel barely registered the luxury surroundings. The moment the doors closed behind them, Chandler had her in his arms again, his kiss deeper, more demanding now that they were truly alone. Last chance to change your mind, he murmured, his voice rough with restraint. In answer, Hayabel unbuttoned his shirt, spreading her hands across the warm skin and hard muscle she'd glimpsed on the plane. The groan that escaped him sent a thrill of power through her veins. What followed transcended anything in her experience. Chandler was both commanding and attentive, discovering what pleased her with focused intensity. His hands and mouth mapped her body with worshipful precision, drawing responses she hadn't known she was capable of. When they finally came together, the floor-to-ceiling windows framing the Eiffel Tower's distant glitter, Hayabel felt herself falling in more ways than one. Chandler whispered her name like a prayer as they moved together, the connection between them transcending the physical. After, as rain began pattering against the windows, he traced lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. Stay, he said softly, until morning. Something in his voice suggested he rarely asked anyone to remain once passion was spent. I need to be at the airport by noon, she murmured, curling against his solid warmth. I'll have you there. His arms tightened around her. But for now, just stay. Morning came too soon, pale light filtering through rain-streaked windows. Hayabel woke alone, finding only a note on the pillow. Early meeting. Car will take you to your hotel at 10. Last night was unforgettable. Brief, practical, with just enough sentiment to soften the abruptness, exactly what she should have expected from a man like Chandler Rio. As she sipped coffee, looking out at the Parisian morning, Hayabel told herself this was perfect. A magical night, without complications or expectations, just a beautiful memory to keep. She couldn't have been more wrong. Chapter 3. Cruel Reality. 2 weeks had passed since Paris. 2 weeks of Hayabel trying to convince herself that night meant nothing. Just a fantasy, a beautiful memory to occasionally revisit when life felt too mundane. She'd thrown herself back into her regular flight schedule, working commercial routes to help cover her mother's latest round of treatments. The monotony of economy-class service was a stark contrast to that luxury private jet, but it helped ground her in reality. Jasiri, her supervisor's voice cut through the crew lounge. My office, now. Hayabel exchanged puzzled glances with her colleagues before following him. You're being reassigned, he said without preamble, sliding a folder across his desk. Exclusive charter contract. High-profile client requested you specifically. Hayabel's heart stuttered. Who's the client? Rio Enterprises. Paperwork just came through with a substantial exclusivity bonus. You leave tomorrow. She opened the folder with trembling fingers. A series of international itineraries spanning the next 3 months, all on the same Gulf Stream she'd flown to Paris, all requiring just one flight attendant. "This is unusual," she managed. "It's a career maker," her supervisor corrected. "VIP clients don't request specific crew without reason. Whatever impression you made, keep making it." That night, Hyabal called her mother. "It's wonderful news," her mother exclaimed. "Why do you sound worried?" Hyabal sighed. "It's complicated, Mama." "Ah!" Her mother's knowing tone came through clearly. "The client is attractive." "Mama, I wasn't born yesterday, Hyabal. Just be careful with your heart." The next morning found Hyabal at the private terminal again, heart pounding as she prepared the cabin with extra care. When would he arrive? What would he say? How should she act after their night together? The cabin door opened precisely on schedule. Chandler Rio stepped aboard in an impeccable suit, not a hint of recognition in his cold eyes as they swept over her. "Good morning, sir," she said, voice carefully neutral. "Coffee. Black." He moved past her to his seat, opening his laptop without another word. Hyabal froze, confusion and hurt washing over her. Had she imagined their connection? The chemistry in Paris? Throughout the flight to London, Chandler maintained rigid professionalism. He spoke only to request service, his tone clipped and impersonal. Not once did he use her name or acknowledge their shared history. By the time they reached cruising altitude, Hyabal was fighting back tears of humiliation. She'd been naive to think their night meant anything to someone like him. Clearly, she'd been just another conquest, pleasant enough to warrant exclusive service on his jets, but nothing more. In the galley, she took deep breaths, rebuilding her professional armor. Two could play this game. If Mr. Rio wanted perfect impersonal service, that's exactly what he would get. She served lunch with robotic efficiency, avoiding eye contact. Chandler took the plate without comment, but his fingers brushed hers deliberately during the exchange. The touch, brief as it was, sent electricity up her arm. When she turned to leave, his voice stopped her. "Are the cameras off?" Hyabal froze. "Excuse me. The cabin's surveillance cameras. Are they off in this section?" Understanding dawned. "Yes. They're only active in the entry and rear areas." Chandler's entire demeanor changed instantly. The cold mask disappeared, replaced by the intense gaze she remembered from Paris. He set aside his plate and stood, closing the distance between them in one step. "Finally," he murmured, taking her face in his hands, "do you have any idea how hard it's been not to touch you the moment I walked on board?" Before she could process his transformation, his mouth captured hers in a kiss that left no doubt about his desire. Hyabal's confusion melted under the assault of sensation, her body responding instantly to his touch. When they broke apart, she pushed against his chest. "What game are you playing?" "You ignored me completely." "I had to." His expression turned serious. "Hyabal, listen carefully. My position makes discretion essential. The service staff, the pilots, they report what they see. Rumors spread. I can't risk anyone suspecting there's anything between us." "There's something between us?" She raised an eyebrow. A rare smile softened his features. "Why do you think I arranged this contract? 3 months of international flights with you as my dedicated attendant. So you can ignore me in public and kiss me when no one's watching." Her voice held more hurt than she intended. Chandler stepped back, running a hand through his hair. "I know it sounds manipulative, but my life, there are complications. People who monitor my movements, my associations." "What people? Why?" "The less you know, the safer you are." The cryptic answer came with a touch of genuine concern. "All I can tell you is that when we land, when the cameras are off and the crew is gone, I want to see you, properly." Hyabal should have refused. His conditions were unfair, secretive, potentially harmful to her career if discovered. Yet the memory of Paris burned bright, and the naked need in his eyes seemed sincere. "On one condition," she said finally, "honesty between us, at least when we're alone. No more games." Chandler's relief was visible. "Agreed." He checked his watch. "We land in an hour. The penthouse at the Dorchester has a private entrance. Come after your crew duties are complete." Just like that, he returned to his seat, cold mask firmly back in place. The pattern established itself over the next 6 weeks. In public, airports, hotel lobbies, anywhere someone might recognize them, Chandler maintained professional distance. But in private hotel suites across London, Dubai, Singapore and Rome, they surrendered to an attraction that only seemed to intensify with each encounter. Despite his promise of honesty, Chandler revealed little about himself. He deflected personal questions, changed the subject when his business came up, and never, ever discussed his past beyond vague generalities. Yet in unguarded moments, dawn light filtering through curtains, his body still tangled with hers, Hayabel glimpsed a different man beneath the controlled facade. She saw it in the way he held her after nightmares he wouldn't discuss, in how he remembered every detail she shared about her mother, in the rare, genuine laugh she sometimes surprised out of him. Against her better judgment, Hayabel found herself falling for the real Chandler beneath the billionaire mask. Each time she promised herself to maintain emotional distance, to remember this was just physical. Each time she failed. Their 6th week took them to Dubai. After a particularly intense night together, Hayabel woke alone in the massive hotel suite. A note explained Chandler had an early meeting, with instructions to meet him at the airport that afternoon. As she showered and dressed, a wave of nausea hit her unexpectedly. She dismissed it as something from last night's exotic dinner, but by the time she reached the airport, the sensation had worsened dramatically. Chandler was already aboard when she arrived, engaged in a tense phone conversation. He barely acknowledged her presence. Midway through the flight, preparing service became impossible as another wave of nausea struck. Hayabel barely made it to the lavatory before emptying her stomach. Kneeling on the cold floor, a terrifying suspicion formed. When had her last period been? Before Paris. That couldn't be right. The realization hit her like physical blow. 6 weeks. She'd been with Chandler for 6 weeks, and not once had she thought about protection after that first night. The lavatory door rattled with a knock. "Hayabel, are you unwell?" Chandler's voice held genuine concern. "I'm fine," she managed. "Just something I ate." When they landed for refueling in Cairo, Hayabel made an excuse about needing personal items. At a small pharmacy, with hands shaking, she purchased a pregnancy test. While waiting for the results, she picked up a financial magazine to distract herself. The cover made her blood freeze. Chandler's face stared back at her. "Tech Titan expands empire. Rio's $4.8 billion acquisition reshapes industry." The test result and the magazine cover swam before her eyes simultaneously, delivering a double shock that brought her to her knees in the pharmacy bathroom. Positive. She was pregnant with a billionaire's baby. A billionaire she realized she knew almost nothing about. Chapter 4. Irresistible Obsession. Hayabel sat frozen in the airport lounge, the pregnancy test hidden in her purse, the magazine open on her lap. Each new article she read about Chandler Rio only confirmed how little she truly knew him. Tech prodigy, ruthless negotiator, notorious recluse. The journalists painted him as brilliant but cold, innovative, yet intensely private. Nothing about his personal life appeared in any of the profiles, as if Chandler Rio existed only as a business entity. Her phone buzzed with a text from him. "Where are you? Departure in 20. With shaking hands, she replied, "On my way." She couldn't tell him. Not yet, not until she understood what she wanted, what this meant for her future. One thing was certain, her life had just changed irrevocably. Back on the plane, Hayabel performed her duties with mechanical precision, fighting waves of nausea and conflicting emotions. Chandler seemed absorbed in work, barely noticing her distraction. When they reached cruising altitude, he finally looked up from his laptop. "You're pale. Are you still feeling unwell?" "Just tired," she lied. His eyes narrowed slightly, but he didn't press. "We'll be in Milan tonight. I've arranged for a doctor to see you at the hotel if necessary." The concern in his voice nearly broke her. This was the Chandler she was falling for, attentive, thoughtful. But was he real, or just another carefully constructed facade, like his public persona? "That won't be necessary," she said. "I just need rest." Milan brought fresh confusion. In their hotel suite, Chandler was unusually gentle, forgoing their typically passionate encounters to simply hold her. His tenderness made her secret feel even heavier. "Something's wrong," he said as they lay in darkness. "Beyond whatever made you sick today." Hayabel turned in his arms, studying his face. "Who are you really? And don't give me the standard evasion." Surprise flickered across his features. "You know who I am." "I know who you are in bed. I know the man who appears in brief, unguarded moments. But everything else?" She shook her head. "I saw the magazine today, the articles about you." Chandler's expression closed. "The media knows nothing about me." "Neither do I," she whispered. "That's the problem." He sat up, switching on the bedside lamp. In the harsh light, the walls between them seemed to solidify again. "What do you want to know?" His tone suggested he was humoring her, not genuinely opening up. "Anything real, where you grew up, how you started your company, whether you have any friends, not just business associates. What makes you happy besides sex and acquisition deals?" A muscle ticked in his jaw. "Why the sudden interrogation?" "Because I'm tired of being compartmentalized," she admitted. "Your secret flight attendant mistress, hidden from the world." "That's not—" "It is," she interrupted. "And until now I accepted it. But things change, Chandler. People change." He studied her for a long moment. "You're right that I keep my life in carefully separated compartments. It's necessary." "Why?" Instead of answering, he rose from the bed, naked and unself-conscious, as he moved to the window. Against the backdrop of Milan's nightscape, his silhouette was both beautiful and remote. "I was 10 when my parents died," he finally said, his voice flat. "Car accident. No other family wanted me, so I went into foster care." Hayabel remained silent, afraid any interruption would break this rare moment of honesty. "The system teaches you quickly that attachment is dangerous. People leave, or they use you, or they hurt you." He turned to face her. "I learned to rely only on myself." "That's a lonely way to live," she said softly. "It's efficient." The coolness in his voice didn't match the pain in his eyes. "When I developed my first software at 19, I already understood that business and pleasure don't mix. Every relationship is transactional. Even ours." The question slipped out before she could stop it. Chandler's expression softened fractionally. "You're an anomaly. Something I never expected or planned for." It wasn't a declaration of love, but from Chandler it felt significant. Still, Hayabel needed more. "These walls you've built, they might protect you from hurt, but they also keep out everything good, real connection, trust." "Trust is luxury I can't afford," he said flatly. "Not in my position." "What does that mean? Are you in some kind of danger?" "Everyone in my orbit is potentially a target," he said cryptically. "Industrial espionage. Competitors who'd use any leverage. That's why I keep my private life absolutely separate from my public persona." "And which am I part of?" Your private life or just another business arrangement? Chandler crossed the room, kneeling before her on the bed. You're neither. You're the exception that makes me question every rule I live by. He kissed her then, with an intensity that suggested he was trying to communicate something words couldn't express. Hayabel surrendered briefly before pulling away. I need more than pretty words and amazing sex, Chandler. Something like fear flickered in his eyes. What are you asking for? The moment to tell him about the pregnancy hovered before her, but intuition held her back. This vulnerability he was showing remained fragile, new. Honesty, she said instead. Real connection when we're together, not just physical. He searched her face. I can try, but my life, my responsibilities, they won't change. It wasn't enough. Not really. But it was a start. We'll begin with small things, she suggested. Tell me one true thing about yourself each day. Something no one else knows. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. Negotiating terms. Consider it relationship R&D, she countered, using business language he might find less threatening. One truth per day, he agreed. Starting now? Hayabel nodded. Chandler took a deep breath. I dream about my parents' accident at least once a week. I wasn't in the car, but in the dreams I always am, trapped, unable to save them. The raw admission stunned her. Hayabel reached for him, pulling him close as his body trembled slightly with the release of this long-held secret. That night marked a shift in their relationship. Though Chandler maintained his public distance, their private moments gained a new dimension beyond the physical. True to his word, he shared one personal truth daily, small revelations that gradually built a more complete picture of the man behind the billionaire mask. She learned he collected first-edition science fiction novels, that he played piano, but only when completely alone, that he funded anonymous scholarships for foster children with aptitude in technology. With each revelation, Hayabel fell deeper, even as the secret of her pregnancy grew heavier. 2 weeks passed in this new pattern as they traveled from Milan to Tokyo to Sydney, their connection deepening while her morning sickness worsened. In Sydney, the breaking point came. Violently ill before a morning flight, Hayabel couldn't hide her condition any longer. Chandler found her hunched over the bathroom sink. This isn't food poisoning, he said, his voice tight with concern, and it's not going away. When she couldn't meet his eyes, understanding dawned on his face. He stepped back, calculation replacing concern. How long have you known? Since Cairo, she admitted. I was waiting for the right moment. 2 weeks. His voice was dangerously soft. You've known for 2 weeks and said nothing. I needed time to think, to understand what I want. And what exactly do you want, Hayabel? Now his tone turned cold. Financial support? Marriage? A convenient claim on my assets? The accusation struck like a physical blow. This was the ruthless businessman from the magazine profiles, not the man who'd held her through the night, sharing his private pain. I want nothing from you, she said, straightening despite her nausea. Not if that's what you think of me. What am I supposed to think? We were careful. Once. We were careful once in Paris. After that, she shook her head. We both got careless. Chandler's expression shifted through multiple emotions, anger, fear, calculation, and something else she couldn't name. We need to discuss options, he said finally, his tone clinical. The only option I'm considering is keeping this baby, Hayabel replied firmly, with or without your involvement. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. That's not your decision alone. It absolutely is. She gathered her toiletries, moving past him. I'm not flying today. I'll book my own flight home. He caught her arm. You can't just walk away. Watch me. For several heartbeats they stood frozen in silent confrontation. Then, unexpectedly, Chandler's grip gentled. "Please," he said, the words sounding foreign on his lips. "Don't leave like this. Let me process the information." The vulnerability in his request stopped her. "What's to process? You've made your position clear. You think I got pregnant to trap you." "I didn't say that. You implied it. And that tells me everything I need to know about how much you truly trust me, despite all your pretty revelations." Pain flickered across his features. "Trust doesn't come easily to me." "Clearly." She pulled free of his grasp. "I'm going home, Chandler, to figure out my life without complication." "You're carrying my child," he said quietly. "There's no scenario where this isn't complicated." The truth of his words hung between them. Hayabel gathered her courage. "I release you from any obligation. I want nothing from you, no money, no acknowledgement, nothing. I'll raise this child alone." Something like panic crossed his face. "That's not acceptable. It's not your choice." "The hell it isn't." Suddenly he looked truly shaken. "I won't let my child grow up without a father. Not like I did." The genuine emotion in his voice caught her off guard. This wasn't about money or reputation. This was about his own abandoned child's self. "Then what do you propose?" she asked quietly. Chandler ran a hand through his hair, momentarily less composed than she'd ever seen him. "I need time to think, to make arrangements." "I'm leaving today," she said firmly. "I need space from this, from us." He nodded slowly. "Go home. Rest. But this conversation isn't over, Hayabel." The way he said her name, equal parts command and plea, almost weakened her resolve, but self-preservation won out. "Goodbye, Chandler." As she packed her belongings, Hayabel wondered if she was making the right choice. Walking away from the father of her child felt wrong, yet staying felt impossible after his accusations. What she didn't know was that as her plane took off for America, Chandler Rio was already making calls that would change both their lives forever. Chapter 5. Life-changing revelation. 3 weeks passed without a word from Chandler. Hayabel had returned to her modest Brooklyn apartment, requested personal leave from the airline, and focused on her mother's care. The pregnancy remained her secret. She wasn't ready for her mother's questions, especially about the absent father. Every day she checked her phone, half expecting contact from Chandler. Every day, silence. It was exactly what she'd asked for. Space. So why did it feel like abandonment? On a grey Tuesday morning, Hayabel sat in her doctor's waiting room for her first prenatal appointment. Around her, other women waited with partners, their hands intertwined, futures connected. She tried not to feel the empty chair beside her like an accusation. "Ms. Jasiri?" The nurse appeared with a clipboard. "There's a billing issue. Could you speak with the office manager?" Confused, Hayabel followed her to a small office where a professionally dressed woman waited. "Ms. Jasiri, there seems to be a misunderstanding. Your insurance shows all charges have been pre-approved under a premium plan." "That's impossible," Hayabel replied. "I have basic coverage through my airline." The woman turned her computer screen around. "As of 2 weeks ago, you're covered under Rio Enterprises' Executive Health Plan. All expenses approved, no limitations. There's even a private birthing suite reserved at Mount Sinai." Hayabel's hands clenched. "I never authorized this." "The paperwork appears in order," the woman said, bewildered. "It's quite comprehensive. Genetic testing, specialists, even postpartum support." Fury building, Hayabel completed her appointment mechanically. The ultrasound technician's excitement at confirming her pregnancy barely registered. All she could think about was Chandler's high-handed interference. Outside the clinic, she finally did what she'd resisted for weeks. She called him. He answered on the first ring. "Hayabel." "How dare you?" she hissed. "Arranging insurance, medical care, without even speaking to me?" A pause. You need proper care. What I need is respect, the right to make my own decisions. The baby deserves the best medical attention available, he said calmly. That's non-negotiable. Nothing gives you the right. Everything gives me the right, he interrupted. That's my child, too. Hayabel leaned against a nearby wall, suddenly exhausted. You can't control everything, Chandler. Not me, not this pregnancy. I'm not trying to control you, he said, his voice softening. I'm offering resources, protection. By going behind my back. Another pause. I took the path of least resistance. You weren't speaking to me. The simple truth of that statement deflated some of her anger. She had cut communication first. We need to talk, she admitted. Really talk. I agree, he said, sounding relieved. Are you free tonight? You're in New York? I bought the building across from yours 3 days after you left Sydney. The revelation stunned her. You've been watching me. Waiting, he corrected, until you were ready, 7 o'clock? Hayabel hesitated, then surrendered to the inevitable. Text me the address. The address turned out to be a penthouse in a newly renovated building with perfect views of the Manhattan skyline. When the private elevator opened directly into the apartment, Hayabel found Chandler waiting, dressed casually in jeans and a simple button-down shirt, more approachable than she'd ever seen him. Thank you for coming, he said formally, as if they were business associates rather than lovers expecting a child together. Nice place, she observed, taking in the minimalist luxury. Convenient timing on the purchase. A hint of a smile touched his lips. I bought it 6 months ago as an investment property. The location became suddenly more valuable recently. Because I live nearby? Precisely. The unexpected honesty disarmed her. Hayabel moved further into the space, maintaining distance between them. I had an ultrasound today, she said, watching his reaction carefully. The baby looks healthy, 7 weeks along. Something shifted in Chandler's expression, a softening, a vulnerability she rarely glimpsed. Do you have pictures? The eagerness in his voice surprised her. She extracted the ultrasound printout from her purse, handing it over. Chandler stared at the grainy image with unexpected reverence, tracing the small bean-shaped outline with his finger. Our child, he whispered, so quietly she almost missed it. The moment felt too intimate, too real. Hayabel stepped back. We need to establish boundaries, Chandler. You can't just take over my medical care without asking. He looked up from the ultrasound. You're right. I apologize for overstepping. The simple apology, something she'd never heard from him before, caught her off guard. That said, he continued, I want to be involved, completely involved, and I want to ensure you both have everything you need. Define involved, she said cautiously. Chandler set the ultrasound down carefully, as if it were made of glass. Move in with me. Excuse me? Not here, he clarified. I have an estate in Virginia, private, secure, with full medical facilities nearby. You could continue your pregnancy in comfort, away from press scrutiny. You can't be serious. Entirely serious, he gestured around them. Once the media discovers I'm having a child, they'll descend like vultures. Your privacy, your safety, both will be compromised. So I'm supposed to just disappear to your country estate? What about my mother? My life? Your mother would have the best care money can provide. Private nurses, specialists, whatever she needs. The offer tempted Hayabel more than she wanted to admit. Her mother's medical bills had been crushing her for years. And what exactly would this arrangement entail? She asked carefully. What would I be to you? Your mistress? Your baby's incubator? Pain flashed across his features. Is that really what you think of me? I don't know what to think, she admitted, 3 weeks of silence followed by this grand proposal. It feels like a business transaction. Chandler ran a hand through his hair, a rare gesture of frustration. I spent those 3 weeks consulting with security experts, medical specialists, legal advisors, preparing properly. For what? For fatherhood, he said simply. For protecting what's mine. Something in his phrasing sent a chill through her. The baby and I aren't possessions, Chandler. Poor word choice, he conceded. But my point stands. I want to be a father to this child, a real, present father, and I want you safe and cared for. The sincerity in his voice was undeniable. Whatever his faults, Chandler seemed genuinely determined to be involved in their child's life. I need time to think, she said finally. This is a lot to process. He nodded, maintaining a careful distance between them. Of course. But there's something else you should see before you decide. Chandler retrieved a tablet, pulling up a browser window. The headline made Hiabel's blood run cold. Ryo's secret romance. Tech billionaire spotted at OBGYN clinic. The grainy photo showed Chandler's car outside her doctor's building. Though she wasn't visible in the image, the implications were clear in the article's speculative text. It's already starting, he said quietly. My security team intercepted this before publication, but others will follow. Once they identify you, your life becomes public property. Fear crept up Hiabel's spine. She'd never considered the media implications of carrying a billionaire's child. The Virginia property is unlisted, unknown to the press, Chandler continued. You would have complete privacy there. And what about us? She asked, finally addressing the elephant in the room. Where do we stand? Something vulnerable flickered in his eyes. I don't have answers for that yet, but I know I want you in my life, beyond just co-parenting. That's not exactly a declaration of love, she observed. Would you believe one if I made it? He challenged gently. After everything. The question struck home. Would she trust any emotional proclamation from him now? Or would she always wonder if it was motivated by duty to his child? No, she admitted, I wouldn't. Then I won't insult you with words I need to earn the right to say. He moved closer, still not touching her. Instead, I'm offering security, support, and time. Time for both of us to figure out what we can be to each other, beyond parents to this child. It was perhaps the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. No promises, no manipulation, just truth. I need to speak with my mother, Hiabel said finally, and I have conditions. Name them. My mother stays with me in Virginia. I maintain my financial independence, my own accounts, my own money. And I want everything in writing, including shared custody arrangements. If her businesslike approach surprised him, Chandler didn't show it. Instead, he nodded with what looked like respect. I'll have the paperwork drawn up tomorrow. Anything else? Hiabel summoned her courage. Separate bedrooms. Whatever was between us before, it's on pause until I decide otherwise. This condition visibly affected him. His jaw tightened, but he nodded. As you wish. An uncomfortable silence fell between them. They stood like strangers now, the intimacy they'd shared seemingly from another lifetime. I should go, Hiabel said finally. Stay, Chandler's request came suddenly. I don't mean stay the night, just dinner. We should talk more about practical arrangements. The careful formality in his tone convinced her. This wasn't an attempt at seduction, but a genuine effort at co-parenting discussion. Dinner, she agreed. Just talking. As they moved to the kitchen, where Chandler surprisingly prepared a meal himself rather than ordering in, Hiabel wondered if she was making a monumental mistake. Moving to Virginia meant tying her life to his indefinitely. It meant trusting a man who had kept most of himself hidden from her until now. Yet, as she watched him earnestly describing the estate's features, Focusing on medical facilities and security rather than luxury, she glimpsed something new in Chandler Rio, a man determined to overcome his own damaged childhood by being a dedicated father. That night, returning to her apartment, Hayabel made her decision, not for Chandler, not even for herself, but for the tiny life growing inside her, a child who deserved every advantage, including a father who wanted desperately to be present. 1 week later, she and her surprised but supportive mother boarded Chandler's private jet bound for Virginia, embarking on the strangest chapter of her life yet. Chapter 6. Explosive Confrontation. Chandler Rio's Virginia estate resembled a small kingdom more than a home. Sprawling across 50 acres of woodland and manicured gardens, the main house stood like a modern fortress of glass, stone, and security technology. For 2 weeks, Hayabel and her mother settled into their wing of the mansion, completely separate from Chandler's private quarters. True to his word, he arranged world-class medical care for both women while maintaining a respectful distance. "He's nothing like I expected," Hayabel's mother remarked one morning as they enjoyed breakfast on their private terrace. "The way he looks at you when you're not watching—" "Don't start, Mama," Hayabel warned, rubbing her slightly rounded belly. "Our arrangement is practical, not romantic." Her mother's knowing smile spoke volumes. Though living under the same roof, Hayabel rarely saw Chandler. He worked long hours in his home office, connecting with his empire remotely. Their interactions remained formal, centered around doctor appointments and pregnancy updates. Yet sometimes she'd catch him staring at her stomach with an expression of wonder that made her heart ache. In those unguarded moments, she glimpsed the man she'd fallen for during their whirlwind affair. Not the billionaire, but the orphan boy still longing for family. Everything changed on a stormy night in their 3rd week at the estate. Hayabel couldn't sleep, the baby making her restless. She wandered to the mansion's library, seeking distraction. Through the partially open door, she heard Chandler's voice, low, intense, threatening. "I don't care what it costs," he was saying to someone on the phone. "Buy their silence, permanently." A chill ran through her. If they run that story, use the contingency plan. Their entire board of directors has skeletons. Make it clear what they'll lose. Hayabel backed away, but the antique floorboard beneath her creaked. Chandler looked up sharply, eyes narrowing as he spotted her. "I'll call back," he said into the phone, then focused fully on her. "You shouldn't be up this late." "Neither should you," she countered, entering the room despite her instinct to flee. "Who are you threatening?" His expression hardened. "Business, nothing for you to worry about." It sounded like intimidation, blackmail. "Media containment," he corrected coolly. "A tabloid obtained photos of you entering your doctor's office. They're running an expose connecting us." Hayabel's hand went protectively to her stomach. "So you're what? Threatening them?" "Protecting you," he said, as if it were obvious. "Once they publish, others will follow. Your privacy will be destroyed." "By threatening their board members? That's your solution?" Chandler's eyes flashed dangerously. "You have no idea what these people are capable of. They'll camp outside your mother's medical appointments, publish speculation about the paternity, turn our lives into public entertainment." "So you counter with intimidation?" She stepped closer, fear transforming into anger. "Is this how you address every challenge, with financial leverage and veiled threats?" His jaw tightened. "It's effective. It's wrong," she shot back. "And if this is how you handle conflict, I'm not sure I want you influencing our child." The words struck like physical blows. Chandler flinched, actual pain crossing his features before his expression shuttered completely. "You don't mean that." "Don't tell me what I mean," Hayabel snapped. "For weeks I've wondered if coming here was a mistake. Now I know." She turned to leave, but Chandler moved with surprising speed, blocking her path without touching her. "You're upset. We should discuss this rationally." "Rationally?" She laughed bitterly. Like how you rationally threatened to destroy people's careers to keep our secret? To protect you, he insisted, frustration bleeding through his controlled facade. Everything I've done has been to keep you and the baby safe. Safe or controlled? She challenged. There's a difference, Chandler. Something dangerous flashed in his eyes. What exactly are you accusing me of? I'm saying you don't know the difference between protection and possession. Tears threatened, but she blinked them back fiercely. You think, because you provide financially, you get to make all the decisions. That's not— It is! You made medical arrangements without consulting me. You threatened media executives without telling me. What's next? Deciding where our child goes to school, who they're allowed to befriend. Chandler's expression darkened further. You're being irrational. No, I'm finally seeing clearly. Hayabel stepped around him. I'm leaving tomorrow. My mother and I will manage on our own. His hand shot out, grabbing her wrist, not painfully, but firmly enough to stop her. You can't leave! The simple declaration, delivered with absolute certainty, ignited something primal in Hayabel. Watch me, she hissed, yanking her arm free. You may be a billionaire, Chandler Rio, but you don't own me or this baby. That's my child, he said, voice dropping dangerously low. My heir. The word heir hit Hayabel like cold water. Is that all this baby is to you? An heir to your fortune? You know it's more than that. Do I? She challenged. Because right now, all I see is a man desperate for control, just like every other aspect of your life. Something in Chandler seemed to snap. The careful restraint he'd maintained these weeks shattered. You think I want control. I want safety, security. His voice rose with each word. I grew up with nothing, no protection, no stability, no one who gave a damn whether I lived or died. The raw pain in his outburst silenced Hayabel momentarily. I won't let my child experience that, he continued, emotion making his voice rough. Not for one day, not for one moment. There's a difference between protection and control, she said more gently, between love and possession. Is there? He challenged bitterly. Because every time I've loved someone, I've lost them. My parents, my foster sister, everyone. The revelation about a foster sister, someone he'd never mentioned before, caught Hayabel off guard. What happened to her? She asked softly. Pain contorted his features. She died. Drug overdose. I was away at college on scholarship, couldn't protect her. Understanding dawned. Chandler's controlling behavior, his obsession with security, it all stemmed from profound loss and helplessness. I'm sorry about your sister, Hayabel said gently, but you can't control everything, Chandler, not even to keep people safe. I can try, he said stubbornly, and destroy yourself in the process? Alienate everyone who cares about you? The question seemed to penetrate his defenses. For a brief moment, vulnerability showed through the cracks of his armor. I don't know how to do this, he admitted, gesturing vaguely between them. Any of this, family, relationships, I never learned. The simple confession, stripped of pretense, touched something deep in Hayabel. Despite everything, she moved closer, taking his hand. Neither do I, she said softly, but threatening people to protect us isn't the answer. He looked down at their joined hands. What is, then? Trust, she replied, starting with trusting me to make decisions about my life, my safety, our baby. Chandler's thumb traced circles on her palm, the small gesture more intimate than anything they'd shared since her arrival. And if I make mistakes, he asked quietly. You will. We both will. She squeezed his hand. That's part of being human, Chandler. For several heartbeats, they stood connected by that simple touch, the argument's heat fading into something more complicated. "Don't leave," he said finally, the words falling somewhere between command and plea. "Stay. We'll find better solutions together." Before she could answer, a sharp pain lanced through Hyabel's abdomen. She gasped, doubling over. "Hyabel!" Alarm replaced everything else in Chandler's expression. Another spasm hit, stronger this time. When she straightened, horror filled her as she noticed blood staining her nightgown. "Something's wrong," she whispered, fear choking her. "The baby—" Chandler's response was immediate. In one fluid motion, he swept her into his arms, already calling for his security team as he carried her toward the door. "Get Dr. Brennan here now," he commanded into his phone. "Medical emergency." As consciousness began to fade from pain and fear, Hyabel clutched his shirt, anchoring herself to his solid presence. "Don't let anything happen to our baby," she pleaded. The last thing she saw before blackness claimed her was Chandler's face, all pretense gone, replaced by naked terror as he ran with her through the mansion's corridors. "Stay with me," he was saying over and over. "Please, Hyabel, stay with me." In that moment of crisis, with her blood staining his clothes and panic in his eyes, one truth crystallized through her fading consciousness. Whatever his flaws, Chandler Rio wasn't just concerned about an heir. He was a man terrified of losing his family all over again. Chapter 7. The Proposition. Beeping monitors greeted Hyabel when she regained consciousness. The private medical suite in Chandler's mansion was equipped like a hospital room, with state-of-the-art equipment surrounding her bed. "You're awake." Her mother's relieved voice came from beside her. "Thank God." "The baby?" Hyabel asked immediately, her hand flying to her stomach. "Stable," her mother assured her. "But it was close. Placental abruption. The doctor said stress likely triggered it." Hyabel closed her eyes, relief washing through her. "How long was I out?" "Almost 12 hours. Her mother squeezed her hand. "Chandler hasn't left the hallway. The doctor wouldn't let him in, said you needed complete calm." As if summoned by his name, the door opened to reveal Chandler. He looked wrecked, unshaven, still wearing the blood-stained shirt from last night, dark circles under his haunted eyes. "I'll give you two some privacy," her mother said, slipping out despite Hyabel's pleading look. Chandler approached cautiously, as if afraid she might shatter. "How are you feeling?" "Better." Hyabel shifted uncomfortably. "The baby's okay." He nodded, remaining at a careful distance. "Dr. Brennan says with proper rest and monitoring, you should carry to term. But no stress, no travel, complete bed rest for at least 2 weeks." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken words. "I almost lost you both," he finally said, his voice raw, "when I saw the blood." Hyabel had never seen him so undone. The controlled billionaire was gone, leaving only a terrified man in his place. "I'm still planning to leave," she said quietly, "once it's medically safe." Pain flashed across his features. "I understand why. After last night." "It's not just last night, Chandler." "I know." He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. "But I'm asking you to reconsider, not for my sake, but for our child's. Our child needs parents who respect each other's boundaries." "Agreed." His immediate response surprised her. "Which is why I have a proposition. One with clear terms, complete transparency, and full autonomy for you." Despite herself, Hyabel was curious. "I'm listening." Chandler took a deep breath. "Stay until the birth. The estate's east wing is yours completely. I'll have keypad access removed from my security team, except in emergencies. Your mother stays as long as you both wish." He paced as he outlined his offer. "Complete financial separation. I'll establish a trust for the baby that neither of us controls alone. Joint custody arrangement drawn up by your lawyer, not mine. Full medical team of your choosing, reporting only to you." The thoroughness of his proposal suggested he'd spent those 12 hours planning meticulously. "And after the birth?" she asked. "Your choice." His voice remained carefully neutral. "You can stay, raising our child here with separate living arrangements, or establish your own residence nearby with my financial support." She studied him skeptically. "And what do you get from this?" "Time," he answered simply. "Time to prove I can change, to learn how to be a father without controlling everything, to earn back whatever trust I've lost." The vulnerability in his request seemed genuine, yet Hayabel remained cautious. "You don't just want a child, Chandler. You want an heir." He flinched. "I used that word in anger. It was wrong." "But true," she pressed. "Your empire needs a successor. My company has succession plans that don't depend on my bloodline." He moved closer, his expression earnest. "What I want, what I never thought I'd have, is family. Real family." Something in his tone made her heart ache, despite her reservations. "The controlling behavior, the threats," she said. "That can't continue." "I know." He hesitated, then added reluctantly, "I've scheduled sessions with Dr. Harrison. She specializes in trauma-based control issues." The admission stunned Hayabel. Chandler Rio, seeing a therapist. The man who barely admitted to having emotions was seeking professional help. "This isn't manipulation," he continued, misreading her silence. "It's acknowledgement that I need to change, for our child, for any hope of—" He trailed off. "Of what?" she prompted. His eyes met hers directly. "Of any future where you might consider me more than just your child's father." The simple honesty of his statement cut through her defenses. This wasn't the calculated businessman speaking, but the man she'd glimpsed in their most intimate moments. "I can't make promises about us," she said carefully. "Too much has happened. I'm not asking for promises, just opportunity." He finally closed the distance between them, though he didn't touch her. "Stay, let me prove through actions, not words, that I can be better." Hayabel considered her options. Leaving meant raising her child alone, constantly looking over her shoulder for paparazzi, struggling financially despite whatever support Chandler provided. Staying meant security, world-class medical care, and the chance for their child to know both parents. "I need something else," she said finally. "Name it." "Complete honesty. No more secrets, no hidden agendas. I want to know everything, your business dealings, your past, your plans." Chandler looked momentarily alarmed. "Some of my business dealings are sensitive, legally complex." "I'm not asking for corporate secrets," she clarified. "I'm asking for you to stop compartmentalizing your life when it comes to me. I need to know the man my child will call father." He considered this, struggle evident in his expression. Transparency clearly terrified him more than financial commitments. "I can try," he said finally. "It won't be easy, but I can try." It wasn't a ringing endorsement, but the honesty of his uncertainty felt more genuine than a smooth promise. "One more condition," Hayabel added. "Regular family dinners. Just the three of us. You, me, and my mother. No business calls, no distractions." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "You're negotiating like a pro." "I learned from watching you," she replied, surprising herself with the light banter. "Your mother, Esther, she's remarkable," Chandler said unexpectedly. "While you were unconscious, she sat with me in the waiting room. Instead of blaming me for your condition, she shared stories of your childhood, your father's passing, her own struggle with heart disease. She has your strength." Hayabel felt tears well up. Her mother, always the peacemaker, building bridges even in crisis. "She believes people deserve second chances. After my father died, she had to reinvent herself completely." "She mentioned working as a literature professor before her illness progressed," Chandler added. I've already ordered first editions of her favorite Ethiopian authors for the library. This glimpse of Chandler connecting with her mother, not just as a patient to support, but as a person to know, touched Hayabel deeply. Family wasn't just about biology, it was about these small moments of genuine care. Their eyes held for a moment, connection flickering between them despite everything. "Deal," he said softly. As if on cue, the baby chose that moment to move, a flutter so subtle Hayabel might have missed it if she weren't lying completely still. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach. "What is it?" Alarm filled Chandler's voice. "Nothing bad," she assured him. I just felt the baby move." Wonder replaced concern on his face. "Really?" Without thinking, she reached for his hand, placing it where she'd felt the movement. "Just wait. It might happen again." They remained frozen in that position, his warm palm against her stomach, both barely breathing as they waited. When nothing happened, disappointment crossed his features. "It's still early," she said. "You'll feel it eventually." Chandler didn't withdraw his hand immediately. "Thank you," he said quietly. "For what?" "For giving me another chance, for protecting our child even when you're angry with me. For—" he seemed to struggle with the words, "for showing me what family could mean." The simple sincerity in his voice touched something deep inside her. Despite everything, Hayabel found herself wanting to believe in his capacity to change. "Don't make me regret it," she warned softly. He finally withdrew his hand, straightening. "I should let you rest. Doctor's orders." As he turned to leave, Hayabel called after him. "Chandler?" He paused at the door, looking back. "Change your shirt," she said, gesturing to the bloodstains, "and get some sleep. You look terrible." The ghost of a smile returned to his lips. "Yes, ma'am." After he left, Hayabel placed both hands on her stomach, focusing on the tiny life inside her, the life that had almost been lost, the life that had somehow brought her into Chandler Rio's orbit permanently. "We're staying for now, little one," she whispered. "Let's hope your father meant what he said." What she didn't know was that Chandler stood just outside her door, his forehead pressed against the wall, eyes closed in silent gratitude for this second chance he knew he didn't deserve, but desperately wanted to earn. Chapter 8. Walls crumbling. The weeks following Hayabel's medical scare brought unexpected changes to life at the Rio estate. True to his word, Chandler respected her boundaries while fulfilling his promise of transparency. Family dinners became a nightly ritual. Initially stiff and awkward, they gradually evolved into genuine connection. Chandler, unused to casual conversation, made visible efforts to engage with both women. "You never mentioned you spoke Amharic," Hayabel's mother said one evening after Chandler surprised them by thanking her in her native language for passing the bread. "I've been learning," he admitted, almost embarrassed, "online lessons during conference calls." Hayabel caught the significance. He was studying her heritage, preparing to share cultural connections with their child. As her pregnancy progressed into the 4th month, Hayabel's strength returned. Dr. Brennan lifted some restrictions, allowing her to walk the estate's extensive gardens. Often, she'd find Chandler waiting by the greenhouse, timing his breaks to coincide with her daily exercise. Pure coincidence, he claimed unconvincingly the first time, falling into step beside her. These walks became their sanctuary, neutral ground where barriers gradually lowered. Chandler spoke of his childhood, revealing painful details of foster homes and struggle. Hayabel shared dreams she'd never voiced aloud, of finishing her business degree, perhaps starting a foundation for children with heart conditions like her mother's. "I could help with that," he offered, then immediately backtracked, "not controlling it, just resources, connections." She smiled at his careful correction. "I'd like that." Though living in separate wings, their lives became increasingly intertwined. Chandler attended every doctor's appointment, his face transforming with wonder at each ultrasound. When they learned they were having twins, his normally controlled demeanor cracked completely, revealing raw emotion that moved even the technician to tears. "Two?" he whispered, staring at the screen. "We're having two babies?" The "we" wasn't lost on Hayabel. Despite their complicated relationship, they were unquestionably in this together. One stormy evening, a violent thunderstorm knocked out power to part of the estate. Hayabel, terrified of storms since childhood, found herself panicking in the darkness. Her mother was visiting friends in town. Alone and frightened, Hayabel made her way through darkened hallways toward Chandler's wing, a boundary she hadn't crossed since arriving. A crash of thunder sent her running the final distance. She found him in his study, working by candlelight. "Hayabel." Concern filled his voice at her disheveled appearance. "The storm," she explained simply, embarrassed by her fear. Without question, Chandler moved to her side, guiding her to the leather sofa. As lightning illuminated the room, he noticed her trembling. "You're afraid of storms," he realized, voice softening. "Childhood trauma," she admitted. "Sorry for barging in." "Never apologize for needing help," he said firmly, wrapping a cashmere throw around her shoulders. They sat in candlelight as the storm raged, Chandler distracting her with stories of his early coding days. When a particularly violent thunderclap made her jump, he hesitantly opened his arms. "May I?" The simple request, asking permission rather than assuming, moved her deeply. Hayabel nodded, allowing herself to be drawn against his chest. The familiar warmth of his body, the steady beat of his heart beneath her ear, sensations she'd denied herself for months, broke something inside her. Tears came unbidden. "I miss you," she whispered, the admission escaping before she could stop it. Chandler's arms tightened around her. "I'm right here." "No." She pulled back enough to see his face in the flickering light. "I miss us. What we had before, everything got so complicated." Vulnerability filled his eyes. "So do I. Every day." The honesty between them felt more intimate than any physical touch. Chandler brushed a tear from her cheek, his hand lingering. "May I kiss you?" he asked, his voice rough with emotion. Again, the question rather than presumption. Hayabel nodded, closing her eyes as his lips met hers. The kiss began gently, almost reverently, but quickly blazed into something more primal. Months of separation, of restraint, of longing, all ignited in an instant. His hands tangled in her hair as hers clutched his shirt, both desperate for closer contact. When they finally broke apart, breathing heavily, Hayabel felt the twins move strongly, as if responding to her racing heart. "The babies!" she gasped, taking Chandler's hand and placing it where they kicked. His expression transformed with wonder as he felt the movement for the first time. "That's incredible." In that perfect moment, his hand on her rounded belly, their faces close in the candlelight, the world narrowed to just them and the lives they'd created. When Chandler spoke, his voice held a vulnerability she'd never heard before. "I love you, Hayabel. I should have said it months ago. I was too afraid." The simple declaration, stripped of calculation or advantage, brought fresh tears to her eyes. "After everything," he continued, "I wouldn't blame you if you don't feel the same, but I needed you to know. No more secrets, remember?" Before she could respond, his phone lit up with an emergency alert. His security chief's voice came through clearly. "Sir, intruders at the North Gate, armed, multiple vehicles." Chandler transformed instantly, pulling away as he switched to crisis mode. "Secure the panic room. We're coming now." He turned to Hayabel, all tenderness replaced by urgent focus. "We need to move. Quickly." "What's happening?" Fear gripped her as he helped her up. "I don't know yet," he admitted, already guiding her toward a hidden panel in the bookcase. but I'm not taking chances with your safety." As the panel slid open, revealing a secure elevator, Hayabel caught a glimpse of security monitors. Black SUVs crashed through the estate's outer gate, men with cameras swarming from them. Not armed intruders, she realized. Paparazzi. Chandler's expression darkened. They found us. The perfect bubble they'd created, their private world of tentative reconciliation, had just been violently breached by reality. As they descended to the secure level beneath the mansion, Hayabel wondered if their fragile new beginning could survive exposure to the outside world that Chandler had tried so desperately to keep at bay. The words, "I love you," hung between them, unanswered in the chaos of the moment, their future suddenly as uncertain as the flashing emergency lights surrounding them. Chapter 9. Devastating Secrets. The paparazzi invasion changed everything. Though Chandler's security team quickly removed the intruders, the damage was done. By morning, photos of the Rio estate, along with speculation about Hayabel's identity, dominated tabloid headlines. "Tech billionaire's secret love nest," screamed one. "Rio's baby mama hidden away," proclaimed another. In the secure room beneath the mansion, Chandler worked phones tirelessly, legal teams deployed to contain the spread. Hayabel watched in silence, his declaration of love overshadowed by this new crisis. "You should return to your wing," he finally said, not meeting her eyes. "It's secure now." "That's it," hurt colored her voice. "Last night was a mistake," he interrupted, his walls visibly reconstructing. "I shouldn't have let emotions override judgment." Hayabel felt as if she'd been slapped. "Emotions like telling me you love me? We need to focus on safety now. The media will be relentless." He was retreating, exactly as she'd feared. The vulnerability of last night replaced by the controlled businessman she'd first met. Over the next week, Chandler became increasingly absent, consumed with damage control. When present, he was distant, discussing security measures and media strategies rather than their relationship. The twins moved restlessly inside her, as if sensing her distress. 6 months pregnant now, Hayabel felt trapped, not just physically by the necessary security, but emotionally by Chandler's withdrawal. Rescue came from an unexpected source. Marcus Chen, Chandler's enigmatic business partner, arrived unannounced one afternoon. "You must be Hayabel," he said warmly when they were introduced in the garden. "The woman who has Chandler reorganizing his entire empire." "Reorganizing?" she questioned. Marcus raised an eyebrow. "He hasn't told you. He's restructuring his companies, creating new trusts, even relocating headquarters, all to ensure your privacy and the twins' security." This was news to Hayabel. Chandler had shared nothing of these business changes. "He's actually terrible at this," Marcus continued with surprising candor. "The emotional part, I mean. 20 years I've known him, and I've never seen him like this, terrified of losing someone who matters." When Marcus invited her to attend the charity gala Chandler was hosting that weekend, Hayabel hesitated. "The press will be there," she pointed out. "Exactly," Marcus replied. "Time to control the narrative rather than hide from it." Despite Chandler's objections, Hayabel decided to attend. Her mother helped prepare, styling her hair and selecting a midnight blue gown that elegantly draped her pregnancy. When she emerged into the mansion's grand foyer where Chandler waited, his composed expression faltered visibly. "You look beautiful," he said quietly. The gala was held in the estate's ballroom, transformed into an elegant venue for Virginia's elite. As Chandler's acknowledged guest, Hayabel faced curious stares and whispered comments from people who'd speculated about her identity for weeks. "Ignore them," Chandler murmured, his hand protectively at the small of her back. "They're irrelevant." For hours, She navigated sophisticated conversation with politicians, celebrities, and business magnates. Though outwardly calm, the strain of constant scrutiny exhausted her. Seeking a moment's respite, Hayabel slipped onto a quiet terrace. She found Marcus there, nursing a scotch. "Surviving the sharks?" he asked sympathetically. "Barely," she admitted. "I understand now why Chandler values privacy so fiercely." Marcus studied her thoughtfully. "You know, he was homeless at 16. "What?" This detail hadn't appeared in any of Chandler's reluctant revelations. "Aged out of his last foster home, slept in shelters, libraries, anywhere he could code." Marcus swirled his drink. By 20, he'd sold his first software for millions, by 25 billions. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you need to understand what drives him." Marcus leaned closer. Chandler wasn't born calculating and controlling. Life taught him the cost of vulnerability. He continued, revealing pieces of Chandler's past: the foster family that stole his first investment money, the mentor who betrayed his trust, the woman who sold intimate details of their relationship to tabloids. Each betrayal reinforced the same lesson, Marcus explained. Trust equals vulnerability equals pain. "Yet he trusted you," Hayabel observed. "After I saved his company from hostile takeover and refused his money?" Marcus smiled slightly. "It took years to earn what you achieved in months." "Which is what, exactly?" "Breaking through his defenses." Marcus's expression turned serious. "When the paparazzi breached the estate, Chandler didn't panic about publicity. He panicked about you, that you'd be frightened away, that you'd take his children and disappear." Before she could respond, a commotion inside caught their attention. A socialite was loudly questioning Chandler about his arrangement with his pregnant employee. Hayabel returned inside, anger building, as she caught the woman's insinuations about gold-digging and strategic pregnancy. Chandler's face remained impassive, but Hayabel saw the tension in his jaw. Before he could respond, she stepped forward. "I'm Hayabel Jassiri," she introduced herself calmly, "mother of Chandler's children, and until recently, completely financially independent." The room quieted, attention focused on her unexpected intervention. "I accepted Chandler's protection for our children's sake, not for luxury or status." Her voice carried clearly. "And while I appreciate your concern for his welfare, I assure you he's quite capable of choosing his own family." The subtle emphasis on family wasn't lost on Chandler, whose eyes widened slightly. The socialite retreated, outmaneuvered by Hayabel's dignified response. As conversations resumed, Chandler guided her to a private alcove. "You didn't need to defend me," he said quietly. "I wasn't defending you," she corrected. "I was defending us." Something shifted in his expression. Before he could respond, Hayabel gasped suddenly, hand flying to her abdomen. "What's wrong?" Alarm filled his voice. "Nothing. The babies are just very active tonight." She took his hand, placing it where their children kicked vigorously. "Feel that? They're showing off." The public setting forgotten, Chandler's face transformed with wonder. Around them, guests noticed the intimate moment. The notorious recluse publicly acknowledging his pregnant partner, his usual mask of indifference completely absent. The evening might have ended perfectly if not for what happened next. As they prepared to return to their respective wings after the gala, Hayabel confronted him about Marcus's revelations. "Why didn't you tell me you were restructuring your companies for us?" Chandler froze. "Marcus talks too much." "He filled gaps you left empty," she countered. "Why keep these decisions secret when they affect our family? They're business matters, complicated." "They're family matters," she insisted. "You promised transparency." His expression hardened. "Some things are better handled quietly." "Like your homeless past." like the woman who betrayed you to the press. Frustration made her voice rise. I've shared everything with you, every fear, every hope, yet you still hide pieces of yourself. What does my past matter? He demanded. It's irrelevant to our arrangement. Arrangement? The word stung. Is that what this is? What happened to I love you? Pain flashed across his features. Hayabel, no. She stepped back. You don't get to retreat every time you feel vulnerable. Relationships require risk, Chandler. If you can't take that risk, then what are we doing? Their argument escalated, years of Chandler's defensive patterns clashing with Hayabel's need for emotional honesty. Words were exchanged that couldn't be easily withdrawn, wounds reopened that had barely begun healing. Perhaps Marcus was wrong, she finally said, exhausted. Perhaps no one can truly break through your walls. As she turned to leave, sharp pain lanced through her abdomen, different from the baby's movement, more intense. When she gasped, clutching the doorframe, Chandler's anger instantly transformed to concern. Hayabel? Another spasm hit, stealing her breath. Looking down, she saw blood staining her beautiful gown. Something's wrong, she whispered, fear replacing anger. The babies! Chandler caught her as her knees buckled, already calling for help. Medical emergency! Get Dr. Brennan and call the hospital's trauma team. Suspected placental hemorrhage, 24-week twins. His security team responded with practiced efficiency, oxygen brought immediately, vital signs monitored. The estate's helicopter already preparing for emergency transport to the specialized maternal fetal trauma center Chandler had vetted months ago. The last thing she saw was his face above hers. All pretense stripped away, revealing raw terror as he pleaded with her to stay awake, his voice receding as medical professionals swarmed around her, fighting to save her and their sons. In that moment of crisis, with their children's lives at risk, nothing else mattered. Not his secrets, not her demands, not the walls between them that seemed suddenly as insubstantial as mist against the reality of potentially losing what mattered most. Chapter 10. Heart-stopping revelation, white walls, antiseptic smell, beeping monitors. Hayabel drifted back to consciousness in a hospital room that was decidedly not Chandler's home medical suite. You're at Mount Sinai, her mother's voice came from beside her. The best maternal care unit in the country. Hayabel's hands flew to her stomach. The babies? Stable, her mother assured her, though worry lingered in her eyes. But it was close. They performed emergency surgery to stop the bleeding. Memories flooded back. The gala, the argument, the sudden pain. How long? 2 days. They kept you sedated to give your body time to heal. 2 days. Hayabel tried to process this. Chandler? Her mother's expression softened. Hasn't left the hospital. The doctors banned him from your room. His anxiety was affecting the monitors. He's been in the waiting area since they brought you in. Exhaustion pulled at Hayabel, but one question remained. The twins. Will they be okay? The doctors are cautiously optimistic. You'll need complete bed rest for the remainder of the pregnancy, but if all goes well... Her mother squeezed her hand. Now rest. I'll tell them you woke briefly. Sleep reclaimed her before she could protest. The next time Hayabel woke, a different presence occupied the chair beside her bed. Chandler sat hunched forward, his usual impeccable appearance abandoned. Unshaven, hair disheveled, still wearing rumpled clothes from the gala, he looked nothing like the controlled billionaire the world knew. You look terrible, she managed, her voice raspy. His head snapped up, relief flooding his face. You're awake. So they tell me. She tried to shift, wincing at the pull of surgical stitches. Don't move, he said quickly, reaching for the call button. The doctor should check you. Wait. She caught his hand. Talk to me first. The twins? Fighters, like their mother. His thumb brushed her knuckles. Their heartbeats are strong. The placental tear was repaired, but you'll need to remain hospitalized for at least 2 weeks, then complete bed rest until delivery. Yabel nodded, relief washing through her. I was so scared. So was I. Chandler's voice broke slightly. When I saw the blood, when you collapsed, he couldn't finish, emotion overwhelming him. Hayabel squeezed his hand, offering comfort despite their unresolved argument. I thought I was going to lose all of you, he finally continued, raw vulnerability in every word. And the last thing between us would have been anger. We still have a lot to resolve, she said softly. I know. He met her eyes directly. But first, I need to say something, without qualification or retreat. She waited, sensing his struggle with words that didn't come easily to him. I love you, he said simply. Not because of the twins, though I already love them too. Not because it's convenient or advantageous. I love you because you see me, the real me, and you stay anyway. Tears filled Hiabel's eyes. Even when I push for more than you're comfortable giving? Especially then. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. You challenge me to be better. No one's ever cared enough to do that. Before she could respond, the door opened as a doctor entered. Chandler reluctantly released her hand, stepping back to allow the examination. The news was cautiously positive. The surgery had been successful, the twins remained stable, but the pregnancy was now high risk, requiring constant monitoring and complete rest. We've arranged for you to stay in our VIP suite, the doctor explained. It's been modified with additional medical equipment for your specific needs. After the medical team departed, Chandler returned to her side. I've taken care of everything. Once you're stable enough to transfer, we'll have the best specialists, private nursing staff. Chandler, she interrupted gently, I need to ask you something important. He fell silent, tension visible in his shoulders. If the worst had happened, she said carefully, if we had lost the babies, what would have happened to us? Pain crossed his features. What do you mean? Would you still want me without them, if they weren't binding us together? The question hung heavily between them. Chandler looked stricken, as if the very thought caused physical pain. The babies aren't why I love you, he said finally. They're an extension of that love, not its foundation. Then why did you pull away after telling me you loved me? Why retreat when the paparazzi came? Chandler sank into the chair beside her bed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. Because I was terrified. Of what? Of exactly what happened. He gestured to her hospital bed. The stress, the danger to you all. I thought if I focused on practical matters, security, legal protection, I could somehow prevent this. Hayabel's expression softened. You can't control everything, Chandler, not even to protect the people you love. I'm beginning to understand that, he admitted. These past 2 days, sitting in that waiting room, unable to do anything. He shook his head. It was hell. Something shifted between them, a new understanding, perhaps. Chandler reached for her hand again, his touch gentle. When I thought we might lose the babies, he continued quietly, my first thought wasn't about losing my heirs or my legacy. It was about the pain you would suffer, about how I would help you through it, about us, facing it together. Tears slipped down Hayabel's cheeks. That's what I needed to hear. A nurse entered with a portable ultrasound machine for the twins' scheduled monitoring. Chandler moved to leave, but Hayabel held his hand tighter. Stay, she said simply. Together, they watched the screen as the technician located first one tiny heartbeat, then another. The sound filled the room, rapid, strong, miraculous. Twin boys, the technician announced, smiling, both measuring right on target despite the complications. Chandler's grip on Hiabel's hand tightened at the news. "Boys," he repeated, voice barely audible. "Congratulations, Mr. Rio," the technician said. "You're having sons." When they were alone again, Chandler seemed transformed, the last of his carefully constructed walls crumbling completely. "Two sons," he whispered, wonder and terror mingling in his voice. "I don't know how to be a father to sons. My own father." "Your father died when you were young," Hiabel said gently. "You told me that much." Chandler shook his head. "Another partial truth. My father abandoned us when I was 4. The man my mother married after, he's the one who died in the car crash with her." This new revelation explained so much about his fear of abandonment, his control issues. "I've never told anyone that," he admitted. "Not even Marcus knows my biological father walked away." "Thank you for telling me now," she said softly. "No more partial truths," he promised. "No more compartments. If you'll still have me, still want to try building something real together, I want all of it. The whole messy, frightening, wonderful truth of family." Hiabel studied his face, seeing genuine transformation in his vulnerable expression. "I love you too, you know," she finally said. "I never answered you that night." Relief washed over his features. Carefully mindful of her IV lines and monitors, Chandler leaned down to kiss her, gently, reverently, a promise more binding than any contract they could sign. When they parted, he rested his forehead against hers. "We'll get through this. All 4 of us." "All 4 of us," she agreed. For the first time since learning of her pregnancy, Hiabel felt true hope. Not just for her children's health, but for the family they might build together. Imperfect, challenging, but founded on love rather than obligation or advantage. What neither of them knew was that their newfound peace would soon face its greatest test, one that would determine once and for all whether Chandler Rio could truly change. Not just his words or intentions, but his deepest instincts when faced with the ultimate threat to his family's future. Chapter 11. Surrender to Love. 8 weeks of hospital confinement tested Hiabel's patience, but strengthened her relationship with Chandler in ways neither could have predicted. He transformed a portion of the VIP suite into a functional office, conducting business from her bedside rather than returning to Virginia. "The board can wait," he said, when she expressed concern about his neglected empire. "You and the boys can't." Her mother split time between the hospital and managing the renovation of Chandler's Virginia estate. The East Wing was being transformed into a fully accessible living space, with a nursery connecting to both Hiabel's suite and Chandler's wing, symbolic of their evolving relationship. "If you don't mind," he'd asked tentatively, showing her the plans. "I thought having the nursery between our rooms might be practical." Hiabel had recognized the arrangement for what it was, Chandler's hopeful vision of their future, with space for independence, but easy access to each other. At 34 weeks, with the twins' development strong despite the earlier complications, doctors declared Hiabel stable enough for transfer. The private medical jet waited on the tarmac, converted into a flying hospital room for the journey back to Virginia. "Home," Chandler said, helping her aboard with tender care. "Finally taking you home." The word caught her attention. "Home." He looked momentarily uncertain. "If that's what you want it to be." Hiabel squeezed his hand. "I think it is." The renovated wing exceeded all expectations. Sunlight streamed through floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the gardens, while the nursery, painted in soothing greens and blues, was a masterpiece of thoughtful design. "You did all this while handling Rio Enterprises remotely?" Hiabel marveled, touring the space in the wheelchair doctors still insisted upon. "I had help," Chandler admitted. "Your mother has exceptional taste." The month before delivery passed in peaceful preparation. Chandler attended every prenatal class, practiced breathing techniques, and absorbed parenting books with the same intensity he applied to billion-dollar acquisitions. One evening, finding him asleep in the nursery rocking chair with parenting twins open on his chest, Hayabel felt overwhelming tenderness. This complicated, wounded man was trying so hard to become someone new for her, for their sons. The transformation wasn't just in their private life. Publicly, Chandler shocked the business world by announcing a humanitarian initiative focused on foster children and family preservation, a billion-dollar commitment accompanied by his first-ever personal interview discussing his childhood experiences. "Why now?" the journalist had asked. "Becoming a father changes your perspective," Chandler replied simply. "Some cycles need to be broken." The interview revealed more of his past than he'd ever shared publicly, though still less than Hayabel now knew. When the piece was published, reactions ranged from cynical to admiring, but Chandler seemed unbothered by either. "The only opinions that matter are in this house," he told her when she showed him the coverage. At 38 weeks, with the twins fully developed and Hayabel increasingly uncomfortable, her medical team scheduled a C-section. The night before the procedure, anxiety kept her awake, pacing her suite despite doctor's orders for rest. A soft knock interrupted her worries. Chandler entered, equally sleepless. "Can't rest either," he asked, joining her by the windows. "Terrified," she admitted. "What if I'm not a good mother? What if something goes wrong?" Instead of dismissing her fears, Chandler nodded. "I have the same thoughts. What if I repeat my father's mistakes? What if I can't connect with them emotionally?" The shared vulnerability, once so rare from him, now flowed naturally between them. Hayabel leaned against his chest, his arms wrapping around her and their sons. "We'll figure it out together," she said, "day by day." Chandler's hand moved to his pocket, withdrawing something small. "I've been waiting for the right moment for this." In his palm lay a ring, not the ostentatious diamond she might have expected, but a simple band of rose gold with small emeralds the color of his eyes. "It was my mother's," he explained quietly. "The only thing I have left of her." Hayabel's breath caught. "Chandler?" "I'm not asking for an immediate answer," he hastened to add. "Just a promise to consider it, after the boys are born, after you've had time to be sure about us." The humility in his request moved her deeply. This wasn't the controlling billionaire making demands, but a man offering his heart with genuine uncertainty about its reception. "I don't need time," she whispered, taking his face in her hands. "My answer is yes." Joy transformed his features. As he slipped the ring onto her finger, Hayabel felt pieces of their complicated journey clicking into place. The chance meeting on his private jet, the passion in Paris, the painful separations and healing reconnections. "Not just because of the babies," she clarified, echoing his earlier reassurance. "Because of who we've become together. Because loving you terrifies me in all the right ways." Their kiss sealed promises beyond words, tender yet hungry with postponed desire. When they reluctantly parted, Chandler rested his forehead against hers. "Try to rest," he murmured. "Tomorrow our sons meet the world." Morning arrived with controlled chaos, medical teams, last-minute preparations, Hayabel's mother praying quietly in the corner, while Chandler reviewed emergency protocols, with tension vibrating through his tall frame. In the operating room, doctors allowed him to stay beside her, his steady presence anchoring Hayabel through fear and discomfort. When the first cry pierced the air, followed quickly by a second, identical wail, Chandler's composure shattered completely. "They're perfect," he whispered, tears tracking unashamedly down his face as the nurses presented two tiny, red-faced bundles. Cradling his sons with trembling hands, Chandler brought them to Hyabel's side, where she could see them properly, despite being immobilized for the surgery. "Hello, my loves," she whispered. "We've been waiting for you." The medical team efficiently completed the procedure while parents bonded with children, a moment of sacred connection, oblivious to the medical activity around them. Later, in the recovery suite, Hyabel watched Chandler holding both sleeping infants against his chest. His expression of wonder hadn't diminished in the hours since their birth. "I never imagined this," he said softly. "This feeling, it's overwhelming," she offered. "Life-changing." He looked up, meeting her eyes. "They're so small, so vulnerable. I would do anything to protect them." "I know," she smiled gently. "That's what makes you different from your father. You stayed. You chose them, chose us, over everything else." Something healed in Chandler's expression at her words. A wound so old and deep he'd stopped noticing its constant pain until this moment of release. "Thank you," he said simply, "for giving me a family." "We gave it to each other," she corrected, "and we'll build it together, day by day." As if agreeing, one of the twins opened tiny eyes, fixing Chandler with a solemn gaze that mirrored his own. The powerful tech mogul melted visibly under that innocent scrutiny. "What shall we name them?" he asked. "We never decided." They had discussed options, but made no final choices, both somewhat superstitious about naming the boys before safely delivering them. "I'd like to honor your heritage," Chandler continued thoughtfully. "Perhaps Ethiopian names." The suggestion touched Hyabel deeply. "What about Edom for the firstborn? It means beginning in Amharic." "Edom Rio," Chandler tested the name, smiling. "Perfect. And for his brother." Hyabel considered the second twin, slightly smaller but with a fiercer cry. "Abai. It means a strong or courageous." "Edom and Abai Rio," Chandler repeated, looking down at his sons with pride. "Strong names for strong boys." As night fell on their first day as parents, Hyabel watched Chandler arranging the twins in their bassinets with meticulous care. When he finally joined her on the bed, careful not to disturb her healing incision, the expression on his face held peace she'd never seen before. "I love you," he said simply, "all three of you, more than I thought possible." As they drifted to sleep, surrounded by the soft sounds of their newborn sons, Hyabel felt complete certainty in her decision to accept his proposal. Their journey had been turbulent, from passionate strangers to cautious co-parents to true partners, but every step had led to this perfect moment of belonging. What she didn't yet realize was that their greatest challenge still awaited, a final test that would determine whether Chandler's transformation was truly complete, or whether old patterns would resurface when everything he valued was threatened. Chapter 12. Passionate New Beginning. 1 year transformed the Rio estate from Chandler's isolated fortress into a true family home, filled with the sounds of Edom and Abai, twin boys who grew more like their father each day. On Chandler's birthday, a date he'd previously ignored, Hyabel woke him with a kiss. "The boys and I have a surprise." In the nursery, the twins wore matching shirts reading "Flight Crew" with tiny pilot wings. "We're taking a trip," she explained, lifting Abai while Chandler automatically reached for Edom. Hours later, they boarded the original Gulfstream G650, the aircraft where they'd first met. The interior had been transformed with rose petals scattered across comfortable family seating. "Remember our beginning?" Hyabel asked softly. Understanding dawned. "We're going to Paris?" She nodded. "Where everything began." Paris welcomed them with perfect spring weather. That evening, on the rooftop terrace of Chandler's rarely used apartment, an intimate setting awaited. Flowers, candles, the Eiffel Tower glittering in the distance. "This is where we would have gone," she explained, "that first night if it hadn't rained." From her dress pocket, Hiabel withdrew a platinum band. You asked me a year ago. Now I'm asking you. Emotion overwhelmed Chandler, the controlled billionaire completely undone. You want to marry me here? Tomorrow, she clarified. Everything's arranged, small, private, just us and the boys and my mother. I wanted you to be absolutely certain, he admitted. To choose me not from obligation, but because I'm the man you want. I'm certain, she said simply. I've watched you become the father our boys deserve, the partner I never dared hope for. The ceremony took place at sunset the following evening in the garden of Chandler's Parisian property. From strangers to lovers to reluctant co-parents to partners in every sense, Chandler vowed, emotion making his voice rough. You've taught me that vulnerability isn't weakness, but the greatest strength. Hiabel's vows honored their journey. We began in the sky, found each other in passion, lost our way in fear, and rebuilt on honesty. Late that night, the newlyweds slipped away to Chandler's jet, the site of their first meeting, now waiting at the private airfield. The cabin had been transformed into a luxurious bedroom with rose petals scattered across silk sheets. Our beginning reimagined, Chandler explained. I thought it fitting to begin our marriage where our story started, in the sky. As the jet cruised among the stars, Hiabel traced the strong line of her husband's jaw. Would you change anything? If you could go back to that first flight, knowing everything that would follow. Not one moment, he said with certainty. Every step brought us here, made us who we are together. Their beginning had been dramatic, their path tumultuous, but their destination proved worth every challenge. In each other's arms, with their sons sleeping safely nearby, they had found something precious, a love that had begun high above the earth, but found its true strength on solid ground.